way, that graph we saw, that's not for me, that's for my kids, my 6 kids and my 7 grandkids. Sometime, somewhere, there's going to be a day of reckoning. And I'd rather look to the next generation than the next election. And and speaking of that, I'll show you this. And then I'll get back to that, and then I'll ask some questions. I have this card. And this is a voting card. It has my picture on it, and it has my signature on it. So it's my card. If I were to lose it, I'd get it back because it's got nobody else can use it. And not only do I use this to get in, but I also use it to vote. There are behind the seats on some of the rows in the if you've ever seen C-SPAN, you see those rows of seats out there. Well, behind them, there's a little card reader on some of those seats, and you stick that in. And there's 3 buttons. Now, I told you I served in the legislature a long time. We only had 2 buttons. Red was no, green was yes. Well, that's pretty easy to remember. There's 3 buttons. No and yes, which is red and green. And then there's a yellow button. That's the chicken button. You vote present. That means you don't know what yes or no. But I don't use that. I use the yes or no, that's it. I went there to make votes. Yes, what you require. But all I want to tell you about this card is I realize it's loaned to me. It's only loaned through the end of this year. And I want to use it wisely, and I hope I have it. And I've done everything I could to use it. That's my commitment to you, to use it as wisely as I can for the citizens of our district and from Florida, and then in some cases the United States and the rest of the world. A lot of these decisions even impact the world. So I want to use it wisely, but I realize it's borrowed. I have to turn it back in. And I might get it again, and I might not get it again. But the point is, I want to always remember that it's a borrowed card used to benefit the district that I serve. So, I believe that we have to act. That's why, with this card, I'm going to do everything I can to act so that bar right there that you see doesn't get any higher. So go to the next slide. So I was telling you about where different countries are. This is where we are, the United States, as a percent of our total economy, our debt. And you can see, you read about Greece in the paper, maybe you have, that they're going bankrupt. They're at that point I showed you on the line where the CBO computer says our economy stops, it crashes. That's where they are. This is Italy, who also, you read a lot about Italy and Spain, Portugal, Ireland, they're all in trouble. Greece is going to be bankrupt unless they make the changes. Now they've made them, but now they're getting ready maybe to boot out the people that made the changes and start back spending again. It won't happen. No one's going to loan them any money anymore. That's it, they're through. So that's sort of where we are, and there's trouble ahead in Europe, and if we don't correct our course, we're going to be in trouble too. So what's the next slide? So back to the budget, and then that's all I'm going to talk about. This is the budget we passed. This budget turns the corner. It only applies. This budget only applies for this year, or the next year, 2013, right here. So you can see there's just not a whole lot of difference between the red and the green, but this is the right course. Out here, pretty far out, it balances. If we stay on this pathway, this makes recommendations on how to get to that point out here. It doesn't, but when you pass it, you think, wow, that's a thin little thing. Is that how we spend our money? No, this is not how we spend our money. A budget only tells us the skeleton of what we would do with the money, and it only lasts for 1 year, this year. It makes recommendations so you can see out further, just like you can see what the president's budget would do, so you can see what this budget does. So you look out further, and that's what this does. But it only makes changes for here, and it only applies to the restrictions placed on the people that appropriate the money, which are members of Congress. So don't confuse this with the amount of money we spend. This is only the framework that sets the stage for us to go through the process of funding every little small program there is in federal government. That goes through a different process. This is only the governor of that process. And that's what passed. This is called people who don't like this, don't like it. And it was called the Paul Ryan budget. But in the end, it's heads on the right path. Do I like everything in this budget? No, I don't. But I do like the direction it's going, absolutely. Like I said, I went there to make a difference. This helps my children and grandchildren. It doesn't help me. I'm not going to be here now. But my children and grandchildren will. I want them to have an opportunity to have a perspective, the perspective of having a great future. So here's where we're headed. Here's where we can head. I'm hoping now that there is an opportunity even for the Senate to pass a budget. They haven't passed one in 3 years, but they might. There was a ruling against Harry Reid yesterday by his own parliamentarian, who was just appointed by him, who said that ignoring passing a budget is impossible. You can't. And so I think there'll be some budgets coming to the fore. Whether any of them pass or not, I don't know. All I hope is that they pass a budget. I don't care where it falls in here, just pass one so we can get together and negotiate what's right. But without having one, it's really hard to negotiate with yourself, which is where we are right now. So we've passed a budget. I hope they pass one. We can meet in a conference and work out the differences. So there is kind of where we are. That's the agenda. That's the thing that's been on the front burner. This is the biggest need in our country, is to slow down that clock and eventually stop that clock. That is the need, and I don't care what anybody else says. And there's two ways to fix it, and they work together. One is this reduces the amount of money that the federal government is spending. Slowly, but it does reduce it. It sets it on the right course. In the meantime, though, there are other changes in here that will bolster the economy. So there's this top-down, reducing the spending. There is the bottom-up, and the bottom-up is building this economy and spreading it out and making it better and making it grow. I saw a survey that only 6% of the businesses, small businesses, are expecting in the next 6 months to expand and hire an person. Why? Because they're afraid. They're just afraid. We're afraid there's not going to be enough cash available, there's not capital because we're spending too much. There's not certainty because of regulations, other things that are coming upon them. And there is not confidence in the public because of, I guess, pinned it all down to the economy. And the economy right now is focused on one thing, and that's the gas prices. The gas prices are eating up a lot of the disposable income, which keeps people from buying things from small businesses. It keeps them from expanding and hiring new people. So there's where we are, and maybe you have some questions about what we have here. Anybody have a question? Yes, back here.
Yes. How would that current path be affected if we were to get out of the Middle East wars? Could that save our Medicare and Medicaid monies, since we have spent $3 trillion on the Middle East wars?
Well, no, it will not save it, although I do believe we should leave Afghanistan. I believe that our military should be commended because everything they've been handed, they performed well, and they have every job they've been given, they've done it to the best of their ability, and I appreciate that as an American citizen. However, it's time to leave. I mean, the tribal community there in Afghanistan doesn't like us, and the leadership of the country doesn't like us. It's really hard to help people that don't want you there. It really is, and it's time to go. So, but does that savings turn this corner? No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
And why not?
Because it's not enough. It's not. We're not spending the kind of. I mean, you're talking about a 10-year period. There was about $1 trillion spent, so that's $100 million. It doesn't even get to the rounding number. We're borrowing $4.5 billion a day, which totals up to about $1.5 trillion a year. That doesn't. The amount of money we would save you're talking about saving would not get to the rounding number of that 1.5 trillion. That's the problem. And if it did, it would only be by 1/10. So it would be, instead of 1.5, it would be 1.4. Yeah.
Yeah, so I realize that was just a drop in the bucket we're referring to. My wife asked for that. But then I looked at the weapon systems, I'm retired from the Air Force, but I look at weapon systems that particularly the Air Force doesn't want, and Congress continues to say that you're going to